This video will cover the instructions for screen printing. Clean the fabric surface with a lint roller to remove dust and hair. Use transfer paper to carefully remove the stencil from its backing and place it on the screen. It should be stuck onto the side that is facing up when the edges of the screen are coming up out of the table. The side of the screen that lays flat against the table should be opposite the stencil. It can help to stick down the center of the design first and work out to the edges from there. Ensure that all surfaces of the stencil are firmly stuck to the screen, leaving no air bubbles underneath the vinyl. It can help to look through the screen at the back of the stencil to see if any portions need to be stuck down more. Remove the transfer paper from the stencil and check again that the stencil is pressed flat against the surface and there are no air bubbles. Ensure that any small pieces of vinyl remained in place and didn't come off with the transfer paper. Use blue tape or vinyl scraps around the outside of the design to prevent unwanted ink on the fabric, in case the printing ink accidentally spreads. A good practice would be covering any portion of the screen that is not already covered by the stencil. When the stencil is completely prepared, place the screen with the flat edge down where you want the print to be located on the fabric. The first time you use a prepared stencil, the design can be moved. However, the second time you use the same stencil, there will be residual ink left on the screen, so once you place it on the fabric, it has to stay there. Use a foam brush to scoop out a small amount of the printing ink. It will take time and practice to get a feel for exactly how much ink is needed for a print. A little bit goes a long way. Lay down a line of ink along one edge of the stencil. While one person is holding the screen firmly in place, use the paddle to scrape the ink over the stencil. The downward pressure of the paddle pushes the ink through the screen and onto the fabric. Ensure that the ink covers all parts of the stencil, and each part has received 2 to 3 solid passes with the paddle. This portion of screen printing is something that takes time and practice to get a good feel for. When the ink has been applied, use the foam brush to remove any excess ink and return it to the bottle. Then have one person hold the fabric down and another lift the screen straight up off of the fabric. Be careful where you set the used screen, paddle, and foam brush, as they will all still have ink on them. The materials may be used again for another print or cleaned from here. To clean the materials, take the screen, foam brush, and paddle to the bathroom and rinse them all with warm water. Once the residual ink has been rinsed off of the screen, carefully remove the stencil and throw it away. Rinse the screen again to remove as much ink as possible, but note that some ink will likely stain the screen. Allow the materials to dry completely before returning them to the box. To ensure a successful screen print, use an even application of ink with the paddle. If there is not enough ink, the design will come out incomplete. Too much ink and the design will lose definition, leaking out around the edges. Also remember to use thicker lines, especially in text. Thin lines of vinyl are more likely to allow ink to bleed underneath them and less likely to remain in place, stuck to the screen.